Hello, good people. Welcome to Sacred Remembering episode 188. I'm Sarah Poet. I'm your host. And today we're going to talk about women and resources and resourcefulness. And I think that this is going to be a different kind of conversation than you ever hear about this topic. And this is really the result of so much lived experience, like so much deep diving and looking at the energetics of life and exchanges and the feminine and what it really takes for the feminine to rise again in a sovereign way, right? Because we have a sacred remembering of the feminine archetype and all of that. But then how do we re-engage like with the world that might not value that sacred feminine remembrance yet? How do we live in a way that honors that value, teaches others, etc.? So I've been on this path for a long time. And upcoming in June, I'm opening my container called Resource. And it's like RE star source, right? So it's a play on the word resource, which is pretty much one of my very, very favorite topics. I'm really honing in on this being a very much a life purpose topic, to be honest with you, like the sovereignty of the feminine and the sovereignty of feminine resources. So I'm going to break it down, some of my teaching here. And on June 7th, we are going to embark in an 8-week journey. It's very sweet. It's a very affordable, very communal. I really do invite you to step into this. There's an annual opportunity for you to join Resource, and that time is now. So hop on over to sarahpoet.com and find that. I will also mention quickly that I'm going to do a free workshop where you get to experience more of the resource frequencies, because in this podcast today, I am going to talk about how there are new earth frequencies. You've heard me talk about the regenerative feminine. You've hopefully experienced some regenerative feminine energetics. We literally cannot create the new paradigm on the energetic fabric that has existed. Obviously, that's exploitative, depleting, and it just doesn't have all the answers that we need. So we need to branch into some of these new earth frequencies, these regenerative frequencies that are available to us at this time. And I am blessed to be a channel for that. So on May 24th, it's a Saturday, before we start the resource container, you can come to a free event and register for that at sarahpoet.com. So let's begin. And I want to begin by asking you a reflective question. And this is one of the deepest reflective questions that you probably ever begin to ask yourself. And it's a contemplation that I've used, like, with myself, in women's groups, in the sacred remembering community. Like, it's so important for us to look at this topic, which is how we as women have secured our resources, or how do we go about securing our resources. So I invite you, if you're in a space to do so, to even just like close your eyes and take a deep breath and just tune into what comes up when I even ask that question. Like, for you to have the resources that you need, what do you do? What is life like? Right? How do you work? How do you use your energy? How do you relate to others in order to do that? How do you present yourself? Do you like it? Right? Then, and I'm going quickly, this warrants much more contemplation than the time that I've allowed here, but then I invite you to start looking back your matrilineal line. Look at your mother. What did your mother do to secure resources for her family, for herself? What did she have to do? What sacrifices did she have to make? What did she have to say yes to? How did she have to behave? And then look back at your grandmothers, great grandmothers. How did they have what they needed? What were their strategies? Was it getting married? Was it staying in a marriage that was inherently harmful or abusive to them, but they stayed because they didn't have access to money or a job? Did they work really hard? Like one of my grandmothers worked in a factory, right? Like sewing, like doing what she knew to do. And it wasn't a lot of money, but it was the money that she could make, right? So I'm super fascinated by not only the reconciliation of feminine and masculine and what that actually requires for us to actually do that, right? I've been studying those energetics meticulously for about 10 years now. But also, I want to apply this conversation to feminine resourcefulness, to women and resources. And we hear all kinds of messaging in the world about women and money, or, you know, feminine energetics and getting money. I mean, you could just take your pick and like find all kinds of thoughts out there, right? So I'm interested in, how do we go about healing feminine and masculine on the planet and healing women's relationship to resources and resourcefulness in the most integral way? And I think that this is a new conversation, right? Because most of what we hear, and I know I'm being very general when I say this, but you can just scan the field for yourself. Most of what we hear is about how women can make more money, right? All kinds of strategies for that. Some work, some don't. And most, gosh, so many are like not working anymore because they're actually old paradigm. And this earth, this new regenerative earth that like wants to come into being, is actually waiting for us to align to these new frequencies. So, you know, a lot of like manifestation techniques and things like that, like women have told me over the last few years, like that used to work for me, but it's just not working anymore. You know, self-sacrificing, like super hustling your energy in order to overproduce, in order to like make enough, you know, to have what you need. It's just not working anymore. Like literally, there are ways that other people can like just produce money that do not work for me whatsoever, because my path is like, you're going to align to this new way or it's just not going to work for you. So like I have to follow this new path with this allegiance that sometimes just doesn't even make any sense, you know, because it's like, and sometimes it's like, okay, I got to just go get a job for a while, right? And sometimes that needs to happen. And I don't know if you know this, I don't know if I've talked about it on the podcast, but I actually got a real estate license. I'm actually working also in real estate right now. And real estate transactions, you know, I live in Asheville, North Carolina, and it was the ancestors and the land that actually guided me and told me to do this. And then I didn't listen for like a year. And then when the hurricane hit, it was like, you know, you should have listened. And so I went and I got the license, and I'm diversifying my income right now in that way. And that I've joked with a few friends and now with the public that almost feels like my inner masculine doing that, because I mean, it's not just the masculine, but it's like, you know, it's a lot of contracts. It's a lot of like, it's also very, very relational. So I love it. I love relationships and contracts. I love those two things very, very much. It'll probably come back around in this podcast episode. But before I get too off track, you know, it's like I can do that, and it provides in a way that then my feminine, my deep creativity, you know, like I really want to bring, especially my first book right now, to fruition. And so because I'm not partnered, right, it gets really interesting, the dynamics, again, between feminine, masculine, money, how we earn it, whether or not we're partnered, whether or not we have inheritance, whether or not, you know, we have a side job, all of those things. It's like, how do we resource ourselves so that we can like deepen into the purpose of why we're really here on the earth, what we're really meant to bring through, and how we want to feel, how we want to live. Like maybe you're working a really high powered job, but you actually super duper love it. And that's great. Like, don't stop doing that because you think you have to do something like less mainstream or more quote unquote feminine, right? It's like what actually brings us joy in relation to our feminine resources. So for me, all of these topics like creativity, home, like helping people in their homes, helping people relationally, coaching people, I love it, right? So it's in alignment. And I'm actually dropping a few things that are not like no longer in deeper resonance. But I got a little like down my own rabbit hole. So I'm going to pull myself back. So most of the rhetoric that we experience where women and money and resources are concerned is really about women getting more. Like, and my question is like, at what cost, right? At what cost to you, to your energy, to the environment? Like, is it really truly something that, like, are you working in a way that is truly deeply replenishing? Is it really harmonizing feminine and masculine energetics? And is it working, right? And I think like we're moving in these directions and we're experimenting with these new templates and like what it actually looks and feels like. But a lot of what has been put out there, as we know, these things that are no longer working as well for many of us, is like an emulation of an old template that inherently sacrificed feminine energy. Now, that's the point that I'm getting to, right? So it's like something has to give in order for that, abundance, or even like less than abundance, like just even having enough. Okay. So we haven't really known, we haven't had a template yet for feminine resourcefulness, both internal, feeling really good, really energized, really just like deeply nourished, like the feminine is back online in an embodied way, not having to, turn it off, turn it on, turn it off, turn on, but like you are living in that embodiment and you are replenished in resources on the external. Now, maybe that means the type of food that you eat, the type of supplements that you can put in your body, the space that you can live in, the amount of money that you have, right? So I'm going to paint this picture, and it is a little black and white, but the formula works with internal resources and then external resources. And so often, because this is historical, like this is what we were taught to do, this is what our mothers and grandmothers were taught to do, we were taught to give away the internal resources in order to get the external resources. Give away what is innately feminine in order to receive what we need. So let me just give a couple examples of that super quick. So let's say you had an ancestor who, again, as a woman, like maybe couldn't get work or find work, that era, she wasn't working. So she depended on marriage. And maybe the marriage was not loving and there was a violence in it, right? But she had to give of her body, of her energy. She had to stay in that space, in that relationship, in order to have a roof over her head and put food in her children's mouths. So she stayed. Let's take a deep breath after that one. Right? So there's a sacrifice innate in that, a sacrifice of the body, of the womb, of her energy, of her life force, right? In order to have the resources for her and her children. My own great grandmother's story is like not far off from that, right? Actually, my own grandmother's story is not far off from that. Or like my mother's generation, my mother, she really sacrificed, like she worked really hard professionally, and she stayed in a marriage that was not healthy, right? But she did it for the wealth that they were building. Took me a long time to work out those wounds, right? Because she actually, like, she sacrificed me, like straight up. She sacrificed her children. She sacrificed her children's safety, right? In order to have wealth and like status. I mean, really dark shit there, right? So there was this inherent sacrificial sort of thread. Like, oh, I have to sacrifice what I really want to do and go be a slave in this job all my life just so that I can have what I need, right? So there's not an easy or quick fix for this, no matter what the internet will try to sell you, because we're undoing patterns throughout, culture. And it's not even just culture. It's not just behavior, as I'll get into later. It's also multidimensional. Like, the powers that actually set up these systems wanted to systematically, they planned on taking from the feminine energy and using that creational life force for their own agenda and for evil and for more separation. So, like, these systemic and multidimensional setups, right, are what we are getting free of and climbing our way out of. And I want to say that differently, like retemplating. We are retemplating what our lives look like, what the sovereignty on our own energy looks like, what we will and will not exchange for resources, etc. And that's what we're doing in the 8-week container called Resource. Okay. I'm interested in a new template, in a new earth blueprint. That's what I've been living, and that's what I want to teach. So before I get more into that, I wrote down some quotes that women have spoken to me, primarily through conversations about Resource as they're thinking of joining. And these are like, colloquial, like, shares. This is just like what it might sound like in your own head or in your own life. Like, this is what we experience as women. It's like this nebulous sort of, depletion and fear about our resources. Well, that has everything to do with how sovereign the feminine is or is not, right? And getting out of these systems. So here are some quotes. I'm giving and I'm not being met. I receive and then I'm scared that it's all going to go away. My innate ability to resource myself feels interfered with. Yes, it is. But we can regain it. I'm feeling heavy, stuck, and under-resourced. I need energy to fulfill my purpose, and I'm just so drained all the time. That is also on purpose, right? Like, these forces that be blocking women from doing what we are here to do. Here's another quote. It's like I'm in a bucket of water and there are all these leaks in it. I keep giving my wisdom to everyone for free and I keep getting knocked off my own path. Okay, so I'm going to talk later about the 8 feminine resources. Wisdom is definitely one of them. I don't know if I'm going to have what I need. Okay, so every single woman is feeling some kind of depletion. Like, we can't even pretend that we're not. Everyone is feeling depletion. And again, okay, I want to go back to this because we use words like depletion and burnout, right? And they're kind of fad words right now. And I love, like, in the last few years, especially, like, COVID was a turn, right? COVID forced us into feminine, into rest, into the recalibration. There's so much planetary recalibration that's been happening since that time. And so women everywhere like are declaring that they've got boundaries now. They're not going to continually give of their energy. Women are quitting. Like women after COVID, they were like, oh, it feels really good to stay home with my kids and work from home. Therefore, I'm just not going back into that system to be a slave to that system anymore, right? And then after that, we had the quiet quitting sort of epidemic, right? And, women, now I'm noticing like women are saying no to relationships with men and saying no to sex and like declaring celibacy and going back into this deep womb wisdom, right? Because we need the womb to be sovereign. That's another one of our 8 feminine resources. And so all of these shifts are happening, which are just so exciting. It's just so exciting. And, ultimately we want more resourcefulness. We want more connection, more unity, right? Not just a lot of boundaries and a lot of quitting and a lot of celibacy and a lot of like cutting ourselves off from the things that have extracted from our energy. And my hand is raised over here, y'all. Like I have gone through this. I have experienced like deep and repeated extraction. It came through different forces. It came through men. It came through losing housing. It came through multiple men. And like I've talked about those things on this podcast before and other spaces. I'm not afraid to talk about it. But this to say, like just short version today, is that I went through a period of like deep, I'll say like the extraction, it hurt so bad. It like hurt my feelings so bad. It was so sad. Like I just feel teary right now because it was like, are you fucking kidding me? Like I'm trying to live my mission. I'm trying to do what I thought my soul and God were like guiding me to do. And I just came up against like extractive episode after extractive episode after extractive episode. And I stopped putting myself out there as much. I stopped dating for sure. And I stopped, like being so open. And I'm still in the process of, I'm in my own retemplating, right? So I got good at living. It was almost like I kept my life small. I kept my life like small and safe. And I worked with like the apartment space that I have, and I took care of my child, and I worked with the resources that I had. But it was like I didn't want to call the wrong attention to myself. I couldn't like deal with any more of this interdimensional force. I had to really walk the walk of like, what does it look and feel like? What does it actually look like to get these feminine resources sovereign so that we're not living small and we're not self-sacrificing and we're not making poor exchange agreements, but that we actually get to be ourselves, actually get to stand sovereign in the world, actually get to be resourced, right? This is me on that path, like showing up very honestly with you here today and always. So back to burnout and depletion, we're starting to hear these words more and more. And in some ways they're like buzzwords. And it's so good that women are saying no to burnout and we're talking about boundaries. But I often find that these words, and the other phrases are self-value and self-worth. These phrases are often very, very nebulous. Like, what do they mean? Like, okay, you're burnt out. Where does it come from? Like, can we name it? Can we name, these are the resources that I had invested. These are the resources that were being taken advantage of. And this is why I'm in a deficit right now. Like, can we actually name that, right? So my teaching, Resource, names that. And one of the tools that I teach in Resource is this thing that I keep mentioning of the 8 feminine resources. So while I had done the path of sacred feminine remembrance, right? Like for years, like first leg of the journey was sacred feminine remembrance. Then I started looking at value, and I started looking at what was expected of me as a woman and what was valued in exchange. And those two things are very different. So again, pause and breathe with this. What is expected of me as a woman in the spaces that I'm in? And what is actually valued? Or even better yet, reciprocated, right? So there's often a discrepancy between what is expected and what is actually valued and reciprocated. And that reciprocity could, of course, be, monetary or otherwise, right? But reciprocity in a way that feels good. So as I was tracking, well, what's expected and what's valued, I was really deeply noticing those discrepancies. And I started to name everything that is inherently my resource, whether or not anybody validates it, pays for it, or, gives energy back for it. I started naming what are these core resources of my feminine that I have cultivated that are valuable as fuck, and they exist in their value whether or not anybody else sees or recognizes them, right? So I am born into this woman body. I am and I'm going to say woman feminine body. That's inherent. Those resources that I'm born with are inherent, and they're resources. Okay? And that's before exchange, before the exchange. And this is how we get those feminine resources sovereign again. When we stop putting the exchange first, when we stop putting the chase for money first, and start looking at what is my innate resource, and am I even valuing it myself? So if you have been taught to sacrifice or give away, like you have to give away too much life force energy in order to have the money that you need for your family, you might have begun to devalue your own life force energy. A classic example I always use about this is when we're talking about healing the feminine and healing our energy with the feminine, like if I'm going through the day and I have a long day and I slug a couple of caffeinated drinks when I'm tired, and then I don't take time to really restore, and I'm running on cortisol and I'm fucking up my hormones, that is me inherently devaluing my own feminine resources, because I'm just showing the example that if I do that, I'm willing to exploit my feminine. I'm willing to take advantage of the feminine. And I'm using the pronoun I, but I'm really inviting you to think about this for yourself. So we have become accustomed to kind of internalizing these pressures, these structures, these patriarchal value systems that, just run on, again, feminine sacrifice and feminine energy without fully valuing it. So when we name the 8 feminine resources, and I'll go deeply into this in Resource, and we look at our own relationship with each and every one of those like categories. So I'm saying that all of who you are can be like put into these 8 categories. And that may or may not be true. And I welcome anyone to challenge it. But what I'm giving is a framework. Okay. And so we look at that inherent value in these 8 inherent resources, and we look at our own relationship to that. And we're like, oh my gosh, this is so valuable. Like that is what happens. Number one, outcome of resources, like that is what happens. Like we're like, oh, I can name what my resources are, right? Then what we do is, well, we name what they are and we give them to God, right? So another play on the word resource is like going back to source. So resource, we put them in this new template, this reunified template of organic creation, this template where the feminine and the masculine are reunified and collaborating, and that is the template of creation, right? You've heard me talk about this before. So we're redevoting those feminine resources to source, right? Then I'm just kind of taking you through now, like what happens in resource. We work with the energetics of you becoming this unified conduit between heaven and earth. So when I'm talking about new earth energetics, regenerative feminine energetics, this new earth template, I'm talking about actually engaging with new earth frequencies that at this moment you may or may not know that they exist. But in these channelings and in the meditations and the experiences and the recordings that we have that I give you, you will tap into these restorative, regenerative ways of bringing your own system, right? Physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, your light body, bringing your system into this updated new earth template of woman. Okay. So we're doing all of this in conjunction, right? Then from there, you're cultivating this. You understand what your resources are. You understand what your value is. Then you can decide and determine what to exchange for, what money value, for, like what's the offer, right? So if a man like asks you like, hey, you want to go out, you want to date, you want to sleep with me? Well, it's like, oh, well, okay, I could use, some like connection. That would be nice. But like, what is the offer here? Right? So how many women listening have engaged with a man and you end up feeling more depleted? I know some of you listening are married to men that you actually continually to feel very depleted in your interactions with him. This is not okay. It is not natural. It is the byproduct of these extractive systems. So the energetics can be healed, right? But you get to say, even if you're married, even if you're already in that commitment, you get to say, I think you're actually asking for these 4 resources, but I don't think you understand that you're asking for these 4 resources. And so I need you to know that that's what you're doing. And then I need you to respect my resources differently. And I have seen men's eyes light up when I explain this to them, because I've used this in my couples coaching as well. I just saw like his eyes were like, oh, I ask her for these invisible resources that we've never named before. I ask her for these every single day. And I just want to continue to have them. I just want to have them. Like she's woman. She's in my house. Like I just want to use up her resources. I want to, enjoy her resources. But then he could see that he just was not replenishing her. And the deficit was like actually coming from him not knowing how to name and value her resources. I mean, I'm just saying, this work is like world changing potential. That is what this is. So let me look and see what else I want to mention to you. Right. I want to say that from there, we can change our relationship with money. Actually, relatively easy. So, as someone like I have been traveling this resource road, and the skewed relationships with feminine and masculine, mother and father, sacrifice, all of it. Like I have been traveling this road for 44 years because I am 44. And I've been traveling it for lifetimes and lifetimes before that. And, we all have. Like, if you are listening to this, if you are resonating with this, like, we want the feminine free and sovereign and sacred again and remembered. And we want her really well resourced, right? So these fractures about exchange and sacrifice, these things that have just felt so gross, these traumas are the reasons that we have quote unquote money issues, right? Like the traumas about extraction, like traumas of extraction. I mean, if we've had sexual abuse, sexual extraction, if your energy was literally taken, if your womb was targeted, this is most of us. This is literally most of us, right? Then these are traumas, and these traumas impact our relationship with our access to resources. And my dears, that was what was meant to occur. Like, that is why they did it. That is why these literally evil forces did this. Like, I've talked about this before. So I had satanic ritual abuse, SRA, through my genetic line. I've been clearing a lot of that. The reason I was abused at such a young age had to do with actually fracturing the soul and actually diverting resources. If you have not heard me say it before, I have navigated blood covenants. Like, covenants were made on my blood that I did not consent to in this lifetime. So these resource contracts, negative resource contracts, stolen resources, stolen energy, this comes through our lineages, it comes through these systems, and it is it's real, it's big work, it's navigable. And speaking from deep diving into this for the last few years, last like 4 to 6 years, really deep diving into this to figure out what was going on, I can say that it's a tandem approach of like, yes, diving into trying to quote unquote figure out where the covenants were, like breaking those, bonds, etc., on your resources so that you can get your resources back and work in the unified field to rehabilitate, work with these new earth energetics to rehabilitate where there have been these fractures. It must be both and. We have to, like, you don't clear something energetically and then just like leave it open, right? Like, we clear and we bring in Holy Mother's plasma, we bring in Holy Father's light, right? And like allow these spaces to be actually rehabilitated. And we will be doing that in resource. But what I wanted to say too was the frequency of money itself is very interesting. And I do not intuit that we need to denounce money, to not have money, avoid money, etc. Like, money is the tool on the planet right now. We need it to live. So many, like, but it's so loaded. Like, we have so many different associations with money, but money is actually neutral. And I can't sometimes, I hate repeating things that sound like the general woo meme advice on the internet, right? But I would say that I do see that it has been programmed in a certain way, and we can work with money to have a different relationship energetically with money, so that like money knows that you are, using it in integrity. Um, Money knows that it is in the rehabilitation with you, that it is like being, um, I'm just getting in this moment as I feel into this, that like money, uh, it allows for so much, right? It actually wants to be elevated in consciousness. Like I'm just tuning into this right now, that it is committed to helping in the new earth just as much as it was used for corruption in the past. So I personally don't see that we need to totally avoid it, totally get out of systems, totally denounce it, totally use crypto. Like, you know, I'm more interested in the energetic repair within the systems. Like, we need to live. We need to, like, when I go to pay my rent, I'm paying with money. So like we need it to continue to exist in the system while we build new systems, right? So lastly, in resource, we look at the self-value, we look at the self-worth, and we look at exchanges and that relationship to money. And my intention would be that there would be a lot of healing in that regard as well. But I do feel and experience myself that with the inner healing of the sanctity and sovereignty of the 8 feminine resources within, and the rehabilitation of the energetics of the light body, then the relationship with money just naturally improves. And that's what I have experienced. That's what I am experiencing, because it so much of it comes down to the somatics too, of like how safe we actually feel to engage. And I'll finish this thought and then conclude. But if we've had continued extractive episodes on our life force, on our bodies, on our feminine energy, and we do, like, whether it's a sexual assault, or even just like having to go to work in the 9-to-5 grind, right? Like, that is an assault on feminine energy. So we have experienced that. So those are, I'm repeating myself a bit here, but those are traumas of extraction, right? That impact your relationship with the external and with exchange agreements, because those exchange agreements just don't feel as safe. They don't feel as clear. They don't, it's like, well, if I put myself out there again, am I going to get hurt again? Right? So we want to like clean up the leaks, like the woman said, the holes in her bucket, right? Like, we want to like get clear about what those resources are and fill those holes in our own bucket, so that we're making really sovereign choices about exchanges. And then it's safer to make choices about those exchanges, right? Without having to self-sacrifice. And we can also, this is really exciting too, like, I love helping women with this. Like, we can modify contracts. Like, we can, what's the word I'm looking for? Negotiate to include these feminine resources when we know what they are. So again, systems of exchange, systems of work, even systems of marriage, relationships, like a lot of those kinds of contractual things historically were actually set up to siphon feminine energy. and to ensure the enslavement of feminine energy. Marriage sure as fuck was set up as, I mean, even as a legal structure, when it started, what the woman owned went to the man, and then she like became the property of the man. And like, we're still, those kinds of energetics still exist. So so we, again, get sovereign, and then energetically restructure, right? Because we're bringing to the table, no, now my feminine resources are sovereign. Now I've remembered. Now I have language for it. So I'm bringing that to the table. And no, I'm not just going to acquiesce anymore. And no, I'm not just going to work my ass off for not enough anymore. And no, I'm not going to be a slave in this house anymore without your contribution, involvement, or respect. No, I'm not going to work for less. No, I'm not going to constantly give my emotional like energy and my love and my my life force and not be filled back up again. Like, we can say that, we can determine that. And what resource does is gives us the language and the energetics and the healing and the new template with which to move forward. So again, May 24th, you can join me for a short energetic event. And on June 7th, we begin our journey. We will have about 90-minute transmissions. So there's going to be a teaching and then an energetic transmission once weekly for 8 weeks. And then we also have a Telegram group where you'll get to know one another, share, and that's where so much of the magic happens because women together create a lot of magic. So I hope that you will join us. I will also say that this is the one program, the one offering per year that I offer actually on an income-based sliding scale. So as of the time that I am recording this, there are still a few spaces left at the discounted prices. And that accounts for everything that I have been speaking about today, because I know that there are like genius women with so much to bring forward that might be low on cash for some of these extractive reasons that I have named here. So this is the one opportunity per year to work with me at like this level of affordability and price. And I don't know if you can hear that noise that my cat is making in the background, but just excuse that. So yeah, it's super accessible, and I try to make it accessible. And it's a really great opportunity to take advantage of that accessibility. So much love to you. Thank you for listening. Please share this with a friend. And I will be back in the next few weeks with a couple of really great interviews that I've already recorded. So, yeah, see you soon. Much love.